All right, so the last time we read Wonder, we were looking at the end of kind of the scuffle that they got in at the nature retreat, and um, August coming home, and now he's going to head back to school and talk a little bit about what that looks like. So let's take a look. The shift. When I went back to school the next day, the first thing I noticed was that there was a big shift in the way things were. A monumental shift. A seismic shift. Maybe even a cosmic shift. Whatever you want to call it, it was a big shift. Everyone, not just in our grade, but every grade, had heard about what had happened to us with the 7th graders. So suddenly, I wasn't known for what I had always been known for, but for this other thing that had happened. And the story of what had happened had gotten bigger and bigger each time it was told. 2 days later, the way the story went was that Amos had gotten into a major fistfight with the kid. And Miles and Henry and Jack had thrown some punches at the other guys too. And the escape across the field became this whole long adventure through a cornfield maze and into the deep, dark woods. Jack's version of the story was probably the best because he's so funny. But in whatever version of the story, and no matter who is telling it, 2 things always stay the same. I got picked on because of my face, and Jack defended me. And those guys, Amos, Henry, and Miles, protected me. And now that they'd protected me, I was different to them. It was like I was one of them. They all called me little dude now, even the athletes. These big dudes I barely even knew before would knuckle punch me in the hallways now. Another thing to come out of this was that Amos became super popular, and Julian, because he missed the whole thing, was really out of the loop. Miles and Henry were hanging out with Amos all the time now, like they switched best friends. I'd like to be able to say that Julian started treating me better too, but that wouldn't be true. He still gave me dirty looks across the room. He still never talked to me or Jack. But he was the only one who was like that now. And me and Jack, we couldn't care less. Ducks. The day before the last day of school, Mr. Tushman called me into his office to tell me they had found the names of the 7th graders from the nature retreat. He read off a bunch of the names that didn't mean anything to me, and then he said the last one. Edward Johnson. I nodded. You recognize the name? He said. They called him Eddie. Right, well, they found this in Edward's locker. He handed me what was left of my hearing aid band. The right piece was completely gone, and the left one was mangled. The band that connected the lobot part was bent down the middle. His school wants to know if you want to press charges, said Mr. Tushman. I looked at my hearing aid. No, I don't think so, I shrugged. Being fitted for new ones anyway. Why don't you talk to your parents tonight? I'll call your mom tomorrow to talk to her with her about it too. Would they go to jail? I asked. No, not jail. But they'd probably go to juvie court, and maybe they'll learn a lesson that way. Trust me. That Eddie kid, he's not learning any lessons, I joked. He sat down behind the desk. Auggie, why don't you sit down a second? He said. I sat down. All the things on his desk were the same as when I first walked into his office last summer. The same mirrored cube, the same little globe floating in the air. That felt like ages ago. Hard to believe this year's almost over, huh? He said, almost like he was reading my mind. Yeah. Has it been a good year for you, Auggie? Has it been okay? Yeah, it's been good, I nodded. I know academically it's been a great year for you. You're one of our top students. Congrats on high honor roll. Thanks. Yeah, it's cool. But I know it's had its share of ups and downs, he said, raising his eyebrows. Certainly that night at the nature reserve was one of the low points. Yeah, I nodded. But it was kind of good, too. Well, in what way? Well, you know how people stood up for me and stuff? That was pretty wonderful, he said, smiling. Yeah. I know in school things got a little hairy with Julian at times. I have to admit, he surprised me with that one. You know about that stuff, I asked. Middle school directors have a way of knowing about a lot of stuff. Do you have, like, secret security cameras in the hallways? I joked. And microphones everywhere, he laughed. No, seriously? He laughed again. No, not seriously. Oh, whew. But teachers know more than kids think, Auggie. I wish you and Jack had come to me about the mean notes that were left in your lockers. How do you know about that? I said. I'm telling you. Middle school directors know all. It wasn't that big of a deal, I answered, and we wrote notes too. He smiled. I don't know if that's public yet, he said, though it will be soon anyway. But Julian Albans is not coming back to Beecher Prep next year. What? I said. I honestly couldn't hide how surprised I was. His parents don't think Beecher Prep is a good fit for him. Mr. Tushman continued, raising his shoulders. Wow, that's big news, I said. Yeah, I thought you should know. Then suddenly I noticed that the pumpkin portrait that used to be behind his desk was gone, and my drawing of my self-portrait as an animal that I drew in the New Year art show was now framed and hanging behind his desk. Hey, that's mine, I pointed. Mr. Tushman turned around like he didn't know what I was talking about. Oh, that's right, he said, tapping his forehead. I've been meaning to show this to you for months now. My self-portrait as a duck, I nodded. I love this piece, Auggie, he said. When your art teacher showed it to me, I asked if I could keep it in my for my wall. I hope that's okay with you. Oh, yeah, sure. What happened to the pumpkin portrait? Right behind you. Oh, yeah, nice. I've been meaning to ask you since I hung this up, he said, looking at it. Why did you choose to represent yourself as a duck? Well, what do you mean? I answered. That was the assignment. Yes, but why a duck? He said. Is it safe to assume that it is because of the story of the duckling that turns into a swan? No, I laughed, shaking my head. It's because I think I look like a duck. Oh, said Mr. Tushman, his eyes opening wide. He started laughing. Really? Huh. Here I was looking for symbolism and metaphors in him. Sometimes a duck is just a duck. Yeah, I guess, I said, not quite getting why he thought it was so funny. He laughed to himself for a good 30 seconds. Anyway, Auggie, thanks for chatting with me, he said, finally. I just want you to know that it's truly a pleasure having you here at Beecher Prep, and I'm really looking forward to next year. He reached across the desk. And we shook hands. See you tomorrow at graduation. See you tomorrow, Mr. Tushman. The last precept. This was written on Mr. Brown's chalkboard when we walked into English class for the last time. Mr. Brown's June precept. Just follow the day and reach for the sun. The polyphonic spree. Have a great summer vacation, Class 5B. It's been a great year, and you've been a wonderful group of students. If you remember, please send me a postcard this summer with your personal precept. It can be something you made up for yourself or something you've read somewhere that means something to you. If so, don't forget to write me, please. I really look forward to getting them. Tom Brown, 563 Sebastian Place, Bronx, New York, 10053. And we're going to stop there. Tune in tomorrow for graduation.